Welcome to the Sheffield United Way. Is anyone going to watch this? Is anyone going to watch all of these? This is going to be really difficult now for the rest of the season. It's just going to be me talking, shouting, if you will, at some points into the void. Who knows? We're going to look back over a really rubbish game for a Sheffield United persuasion. Anyway, West Ham against Sheffield United, of course, the game in question, a 2-0 win for the Hammers. Going to have a number of guests joining us, and I like to get a little bit of variety. I thought it was only right to start with a West Ham fan. Will, I joined you on your channel in the preview. That was pretty painful. This is worse. How are you?
Yeah, I'm great. I did have a few messages, Hal, sort of giving me a bit of a hard time for bringing up all the traumatic events in your life, namely Carlos Tevez.
My life. Oh, right. Yeah.
Yeah,
Sheffield United's life. Yeah. Just wondering how you knew about all that stuff. But, yeah, Will, it's I'd like to say it's good to have you on, but that would be a big fat lie. So you are from the We Are West Ham podcast.
I am.
And what I would love to start with is, what's the West Ham fan feeling after a 2-0 win against Sheffield United?
Well, personally, I'm really pleased because I've been going to West Ham for like season ticket going for around 22 years now. And most of that time, it has been rubbish. So I still, albeit the fact that you aren't very good at football this season, you weren't very good last week, you weren't particularly good yesterday. Despite that, that doesn't just guarantee the fact that West Ham would pick up 3 points. That screamed 1-1 to me yesterday after you got thrashed by Newcastle the week before. So I was really chipper and buoyant after the game, because West Ham had got 3 points, which I'm not used to seeing in my life. And I went into the pub afterwards with a friend of mine and my cousin and one of his friends, and they're all very much almost a bit grumpy and curmudgeonly. Oh, we should have scored more, and David Moyes and this and that. And I was like, where have you been for the last 2 decades? Who have you been supporting? We've just won a game at home. Like it just annoys me when football fans change and sort of forget who they've been supporting anyway. As will happen with Newcastle, as has happened with a few Man City fans, but not all, particularly Chelsea fans. Tottenham fans are the worst for it, I'd like to add. And I just think we're still West Ham, lads. We've won a game at home. That's still good for us. Just be happy. But I was happy. I thought we didn't really get out of third gear. It was nice to see us win 3 points. Most of our players played quite well. So what's not to like? But yeah, apparently some of my friends and West Ham cohort didn't feel the same. But that sometimes is just the way among Hammers fans. We could win the Champions League and there'd be a fair few still going, oh yeah, but David Moyes is the right man for the job. You know what I mean?
Interesting problems to have. I mean, Will, away game in Germany, then Newcastle Sunday. Do you think West Ham relaxed, took the foot off the gas a little bit second half?
Yeah, I do. Yeah, I honestly don't think. I sort of feel a bit bad saying this because when you asked me to come on, you said I seem fair and reasonable. And so I'm certainly not one to just poke fun at other teams for the sake of it. But I really didn't think you were very good yesterday. I think we could have played for another 90 minutes. I don't think you would have scored a goal. So I do think there is that Moisey just chilled out a bit. I think we brought on Mavropanos in the last 10 minutes and went 5 at the back. I almost thought that was a bit David Moyes taking the mickey out of Sheffield United a little bit. It wasn't necessary, but yeah. And I haven't got a problem with that. I'm a sort of buy into the fact that we've got a whole season to play here across 3 different competitions. So if you don't need to expel all of your energy or use all your best players in order to beat Sheffield United 5-0 at home rather than 2, I don't really care. As soon as the game was clearly won after 80 minutes or whatever, or probably even earlier than that, but I think, yeah, by all means, switch focus to Thursday when you can afford to do it. If it was 0-0, Moyes wouldn't have done that. We would have gone for the 3 points. But yeah, I do find myself in a sort of increasingly at odds with the lion's share of my club's fan base sometimes. Because from my perspective, yeah, that game was won at around 75, 80 minutes yesterday. Thursday became the most important game. Moyes protected the win. It's 3 points. We'd have got 3 points. We'd have done you 6-0 or 2. So yeah, can focus on Thursday.
Rather depressing hearing that, I'll be honest with you, because a lot of Blades were saying, oh, we were a little bit better for a sort of 20-minute spell in the second half. And I think you've just explained why. I am going to share some quotes I've seen on Twitter from Blades to kind of pepper through this discussion. And I'm not going to keep Will for the whole of it because he's got more important things to do. But I am going to bring in more fans, and they're all going to be Blades. Jason is where we're headed next, who is in Boston in the US of A. Yeehaw. Jason, welcome. What time is it?
Thank you. It is 5 a.m.
I mean, that is dedication. That is dedication to the cause. I want to be able to hear the round of applause that you are getting. Thank you, Will.
The reality is I would have been up anyway, and I felt a little bit masochistic. So here we are. Will, thank you for that. Great. Good morning.
Jason, talk me through your post-match thoughts after a 2-0 defeat against West Ham.
Yeah, I was feeling okay for a bit, and Will, hearing you speak about that has quickly taken that from me. It's going down 8-0 last week. I'm happy to write that off. I think the context of the week, and really that being an outlier in the sport in general, as Hecky said a couple of times, if you learn something from it, you can accept the result, you move on, and mostly about how you respond. And I thought they looked okay. They clearly look a little bit rattled. And then, as was said, West Ham took the foot off the gas. We got Brewster out there again. We got Slimani, who also looked a little sharp. So, I mean, I don't think it's all a total loss. I think it's maybe a step back in the right direction just to not lose by 6 goals. But at least trending back to not being as embarrassed as we could have been.
What a way to put it. I'm going to bring in Johnny from Shoreham View. Here he is, Avec, taking me back from Sunderland, I believe, Avec, rather than a French company. Johnny, you look dishevelled. How are you?
I feel about as horrific as our performance was yesterday, and that's pretty damn bad.
Yeah, you're not well, mate, I should say. I hope you start to feel better soon. Thank you for joining us. You probably feel like it's 5 a.m. in Boston.
I wish it was 5 a.m. in Boston, because then I could still be in bed.
Yeah, there is that. Johnny, be honest with me. Did you see this result coming at West Ham?
I thought that 2-0 was pretty damn good, considering the way we played, because, let's face it, we were pretty damn bad. This is a PG channel, so I will respect the language barrier that exists before me. So I'll just say we were pretty poor, and we continue to be pretty poor ever since the first 90 minutes of Tottenham. We've been pretty poor since, haven't we? Let's be fair. It's almost as if that took the wind out of the sails completely. That took any hope and glory that we had for the season, packed it, shoved it down his throats, kind of said, ha ha ha, welcome to the Premier League. Now it's all downhill from here.
Yeah, I mean, I don't really know what else anyone can say on that, because, of course, it absolutely. I mean, I'm going to bring Will back into this. How would West Ham fans be reacting, right, if they had experienced the Sheffield United start? Let's say West Ham were bottom with 1 point. What would they be saying?
Oh, it would, yeah. I mean, the PG language barrier on your channel certainly wouldn't survive.
But, Will, the reason I'm asking that is so many Sheffield United fans are saying, do not change the manager. Like, can you imagine a scenario where West Ham fans would actually be saying, yeah, stick with Moyes?
Like I say, we've currently got easily one of our top 3 managers of all time. Certainly our best manager we've had since I've been alive, and circa 35% of the fan base still want the man sacked. So you're not always dealing with the most rational of supporters as far as sacking managers go. But I did parrot fashion, verbatim repeat your quotes on the show, on our podcast in the week, Hal, to a lot of my friends yesterday I was talking to, saying, especially after the game, when everyone was kind of uniform in saying they were really bad, probably the worst team we've seen at London Stadium this season, that, surely Heckingbottom's going soon. I did let everyone know that there wasn't really an appetite for that among Blades fans, and there's still some quite, warm feeling towards him, and that was sort of met with confused looks. It's like, what? The teams and fans back and support their managers even if they're not doing well.
That warm feeling's cooling down.
Well, yeah, I mean, maybe so. But like I say, I'm not really the sort of person to just come and bash other fans for lols. And it's not really about that. I just didn't think you were very good at all. And it would be remiss and just inaccurate and maybe a bit misleading of me to sort of suggest otherwise just because I'm on a Blades channel.
Yeah, I respect that. What we're going to do as Blades is talk more about the manager and the managerial situation a little bit later. But Will, can you see Sheffield United staying up?
Again, no, I think.
Okay.
No, I just think.
Can I ask you again?
On that, yes, I genuinely thought you were fairly resolute-ish at the back. I didn't feel like we were cutting you open time and time and time again. I do think bringing Saeed Benrahma on, who I don't is the worst, one of the worst footballers I've ever seen pull on a West Ham shirt, to be quite honest. At the end, He didn't do anything at all. Oh, yeah, but I've got my own agenda against him. Ignore that. Take that with a pinch of salt. But based on one performance, obviously not. Off the back of the Newcastle thing last week. But then again, I suppose at the beginning of the season, you as fans and probably as a staff and group of players as well, wouldn't necessarily have highlighted West Ham away, a team who are hopefully going to finish certainly in the top half, in or around the top 7 potentially, and go far in Europe again. I don't suppose you'd have highlighted that as anything other, or as a likely win, or even a likely point. I guess if you've got any chance of staying up, it's going to be how you fare, not against Newcastle and West Ham. It'll be how you fare against the Bournemouths and the Wolves and the team, the Lutons, the Evertons, the teams who are going to be in and around there with you at the end of the season. Is that reasonable?
Yeah, I mean, you're doing so well until you pluralized football teams. But yes, in terms of like that mini league, absolutely, completely agree with you. And Will, before I let you go, where do West Ham finish this season?
I was quite disappointed yesterday to discover that after that win, we were still 7th. And I think that is probably the best we can hope for, really. I'd be absolutely thrilled and delighted with that. I am very much prioritise Europe. I know the manager is obviously a great European pedigree manager, as he's proven over the last few seasons with West Ham. And so I'd rather us just go both barrels for the Europa League if we had to choose. But I think our squad is more equipped than it has been to battle on more than one front, which is nice. I think Premier League wise, especially after last year, which was so rocky, it is important that Moyes addressed that this season, which he appears to have done. I think that will carry on because our squad is arguably better now than it was with Declan Rice in. I know people laugh at that, but I genuinely think it's similar to the Harry Kane effect you're seeing at Tottenham. He'd outgrown West Ham. It was the Declan Rice show rather than the West Ham United show. Jared Bowen's now our best player. He's the most unassuming man you'll ever see, the least superstar vibe sort of bloke you'll ever come across, which is it's basically Moyes is back to being the boss and he's in control of things now. And I think that got away from him a bit with Declan Rice deciding he wanted to be a Frank Lampard box-to-box player rather than a holding midfielder, which is what he's good at. So this is a long, drawn-out way of saying I think if we finish 7th, I would be delighted. And if we go deep in the Europa League, once again, semis-ish, I will be absolutely thrilled. As, like I said, most of my life has been spent watching a load of blokes in claret and blue purporting to be footballers, playing under blokes purporting to be managers, a la Avram Grant, Gianfranco Zola, and, of course, the dreaded Big Sam Allardyce. So I'm absolutely loving the ride at the moment. If we finish 9th and go out in the quarterfinals of the Europa League, still way better than the vast majority of seasons I've watched in my lifetime. So I'm quite happy with that. But you'll be able to find, no doubt, on Twitter or YouTube or somewhere, claret and blue channels, podcasters, fans who will tell you that anything short of 4th with this group of players, Moyes is a disgrace and we should all be, the whole club should be wound up and shut down and everyone should be sacked.
Well, Will, I said you were balanced and fair. You were. Thank you very much for joining us.
Pleasure, gents. And I'm really sorry about yesterday.
Yeah, it wasn't your fault. You weren't playing. But I still appreciate you and have a good rest of your Sunday.
Yeah, and you lads, enjoy it. Cheers.
So, Will, joining us there and sharing his comments. I thought, as I say, we're very fair from the We Are West Ham podcast. I'm going to bring in Jono, whose dad is actually a West Ham fan, which can't be easy because, Jono, I've known you since you and I were the same height but younger. And you're a massive Blade, so that's not an easy one yesterday for you.
No. I think Dad was very fair, and he's more adopted Sheffield United now. But yeah, it wasn't the easiest. I think people have already hit the comments on the head that it was a poor performance. Poor outing. It's not looking good at the moment, is it?
It's worrying, and I'm going to read some comments. So Tony has said this: Hecky's post-match comments once again were worrying. We brought some bigger lads on in the second half when we realised that it might be our route back into the game. So that's the quote from Hecky. We brought some bigger lads on when it might be our route back into the game. Now, here's what Tony said. You brought them on in the 79th minute. Why did it take that long to realise what changes were needed? Why didn't you scout West Ham and identify this before the match and set up the team with that in mind? Tactically, Sheffield United look naive. So, Johnny, what do you make of those comments?
Copy, paste, more and more and more waffle. It's just, you can say it all day long, and all Ecky's going to do is waffle backwards. We can say what we want. It's not going to change the man's outlook on life, is it? He's got a system. He ain't going to change it for nobody. He ain't going to do anything different. He's going to play the same team if he can, maybe put some more players in due to injuries, because he works them into the ground so much that they keep picking up these calf injuries, these hamstring injuries. We can copy and paste all day long, and we can waffle all day long. The man's never going to change what he's doing. The only thing we can do, like people are saying about him, oh, but he's great at developing young players. How many young players are in the team at the moment from the Sheffield United Academy? Do you know what I mean? We've got an injury crisis on, and we've got new signings in there. He's got all his targets that he wanted. Yeah, fair enough, they came in late. When we're still seeing the same things happening, we're still seeing Robbo at the back. As much as I love the guy, what do we sign Trusty for? Do you know what I mean? We've got a team that he likes to set up and put out there, and he ain't going to change it for anybody.
Well, Johnny, we
can say what we want.
You've asked the question, what did he sign Trusty for? Can I bring a little bit of Billy Balance into this and say,
no,
maybe,
stop it.
maybe he signed Trusty to push Jack Robinson on, and that appears to have happened.
Maybe, or just throwing it out there. Maybe it is. My only real, if I'm going to try and be balanced myself, and I'll try to be, because I'm on the Sheffield United way.
I believe in you.
I can try. Maybe he feels that he's not quite up to speed yet, and if that's the case, come out and say it. Do you know what I mean? If players that we've signed aren't up to speed yet, come out in the media and say it so we understand. I do think that his communication skills do need work, and if he communicates the same way that he does in his presses in the way into the changing room, that worries me, because, as I said with the fans himself, it's just copy and paste all the time, isn't it? It's
I know what you mean.
Back on the grass.
The Wilder approach was heart on sleeve, and I think a lot of fans relate to that and like that, and they feel like that's a very honest way. I know exactly what he's thinking. Neil Warnock was kind of the same. I remember after defeats, hearing Neil speak, I'd often feel a lot better, a lot buoyed by it. I mean, Hecky's not quite like that, but maybe that's just his personality. That's just who he is. He does seem like a very, very intelligent man that never gets too high and never gets too low. And maybe you actually need that in a situation like we're in, because if someone's throwing teacups and kicking off and kicking down doors, that's going to grow quite tired quite early when you're losing every week, Johnny, wouldn't you say?
Yeah, maybe. And I'd probably get behind that. But sometimes I don't want him to be emotional. I just want him to be forthcoming, if that makes sense. It can say something that's fair and balanced. It can say something very calmly, but tell us something. Do you know what I mean? It's all well and good just coming out and saying these very calm, measured, low balance things. If it doesn't say anything, it can say a lot of words and say nothing in the background, if that makes sense.
Well, and people say that about me all the time, in fairness.
This YouTubers, mate, we get it all the time.
we do. Although not literally. Anyway, let's move on. Jono, what changes? Because you've just heard Johnny, where we've also got Jason, a lot of J's here. Johnny just basically said it's the same thing. You know, the formation's never going to change. I mean, Jono, do you think that there will be changes? Would you like to see changes? And by that, I'm talking about tactically, personnel, not the manager yet. We'll talk about that in a moment.
Personnel, yeah. I think, like I said, the big one for me is Trusty. What does he have to do to get a game? I'm not convinced that Robinson is the one to drop out, as much as he maybe is limited. I still think he's probably been our best defender this season. So whether it's a case of getting Trusty and Robinson both in, obviously Egan's injury looks like it's a bad one. So whether there's now room for those two to come in together. As much as I like McAtee, I also don't know whether away from home he's what we need. We've got to get the balance. This is the first time in a few years that I have got no confidence in the defence, and I feel that every time that they go forward, that we're looking like conceding. So, as much as I like McAtee going forward, at the moment we need to get back to basics and stop the ball going in the back of the net. So I thought Samani looked good in a very short spell yesterday. I thought Davis looked all right. So whether we need to bring one of them in, Davis maybe more box to box just to try and beef us up slightly. I'm not convinced about formation change, but I know Newcastle is, the extreme that we played for at the back then, and we got absolutely destroyed. Obviously, we were already 3-0 down, and confidence was absolutely shot. So, yes, we do need changes. I'd say it's more personnel than formation at the moment, potentially, but I just wonder whether we're just not good enough. Whatever we do, to be really blunt, I think it's a lack of quality than a lack of effort or anything like that. I just think we maybe need to start accepting that we're not that good.
Harsh words, but many will be nodding along to that. Jason, is it possible there's 3 teams worse this season? And also, I want you to think about this one. Where does our first win come?
Yeah, I mean, you have to think that. I think we're all sat here saying that we're not that great, which is okay. I think that was our expectation probably going into the season. You still want to be competitive and fight for something, but it's hard. It's hard even having a low expectation and losing all the time. So I get why that's depressing. I think we could be the 4th worst team if we try really hard. The talk about formation change and personnel change, it's difficult. You remember when Slav was trying to fit all these players that have been playing in the system and recruited for the system in something else and just completely fell apart. So I don't know if formation changes it. And also without the January window probably to bring in extra personnel or try to change tactics and bring in players that fit a different set of tactics. I don't think that's realistic either. So I think it's probably going to be one of those things where at some point it'll click. I'm hoping it's next week. Like I mentioned, we don't look all that great, but I think it's a step towards the right direction where Fulham could be an easy target to try to steal a result. And then hopefully that's the tide that turns. And speaking of Slav again, this also reminds me a little bit of when it felt like we were never going to score a goal ever again. And then they did. And then they popped off. So I'm hoping that's the case, and got to keep a little bit of hope alive. Otherwise, going to be fast forwarding through to next season.
Yeah, otherwise apathy sets in. And, I said it on the match reaction, there's nothing more dangerous as a football fan than apathy. Right, I said I'd go through some comments. Sean Meakin says this, with full permission, by the way, to use this. All these calling for Hecky's head. Did they really think we would be competitive and stay up? I expected us to have a record low points and a record low goals scored. We are seeing the beginning of when no promoted team will stay up. We are close to some teams not winning a single game all season. Dan says Luke Thomas isn't an upgrade on any player we've got. What a stupid waste of a loan. So, Jason, I'll go back to you. You've just heard those comments. First of all, what do you make of them? And then think about this one as well. Which signings have impressed you?
I've already forgotten it because it's 5 a.m. So I'm going to go with the last one and say Luke Thomas, he's an interesting one. I think Hecky seems to value experience and composure. And with the lack of money, I mean, the promoted teams, that's what you're buying, right? You're buying Band-Aids in your squad until they can all gel and feel comfortable and start to click and hopefully get a survival spot. So Luke Thomas, I think he's done well enough. Yesterday, he was caught out a few times. I think a lot of his crosses, I don't know if he was excited, but a lot of his crosses were absolutely gone or clear over to Bogle. So I think defensively he was okay. He got cut out on that first goal. A lot of touches, a lot of long passes from him that were crosses. I thought he was fine. But as far as new signings go, Hammer seems to be the good one. He seems to be a little bit on edge at the moment. I think yesterday, a lot of one-touch passes. He got caught out as well. But there's clearly something there where, his set-piece skills, his attack, his passing. He opens up a lot of the game. So I think that's the one that's impressed me the most so far. I'm excited to see what him and Archer can do when they actually get settled in and start to play together.
Yeah, absolutely. And Jono, is Gus Hamer an upgrade on Sander Berge?
Yes, but for me, he is. I think he had, by his early high standards, had probably a couple of poor games. But I think, going on what Jason just said, I think yesterday he's probably trying a bit too hard. You know, the second goal was come from mid, probably trying a bit too clever pass. So yeah, I think Hamer is an upgrade on Berg. Like I said, potentially 2 poor games, but I think long term he will prove to be a very good player. And he's already shown what he can do. So yeah, I think he's an upgrade.
I mean, defensively, it's concerning because we've suddenly become so poor, and that was one thing we could always rely on, apart from Underslav. In the attacking third, we look devoid of ideas. And since the 90th minute at Tottenham, it's 12 conceded, 0 scored. I mean, it's terrifying. It's really concerning. Johnny, is that personnel? Is that tactics? Is that training? Is that the coaching? What are your thoughts?
All of the above. I mean, if you look at it, the way we're going to play in the Premier League, you have to shore it up at the back. It's not the Championship. You can't take as many risks. And you see some of the goals are conceded this season. It's come from silly risks. Who can forget Larouche at Man City? And it's daft because I think Larouche shows potential, but he doesn't show. He hasn't had experience. Whereas Luke Thomas is also a player that we're basing on potential, but he has an experience in the English league. So that's where the difference kind of stands out with him. Egan, since we put the captain's armband on him officially, not just unofficially, it seems that he's either been crushed under the weight of it or he's just finding the Premier League hard. I like to think it's the first and maybe it can be remedied. Anel's not looked himself. I'm not going to judge him too much. It is after the season he's just had. You'd like to think maybe it's just he's looking bad because of the rest of the team around him. We miss Baldock every time he's not playing. My personal pick for a captain. Love Jayden going forward. Defensively gives me kittens every single time. What is our obsession with buying players to play out wide that cannot cross? We've
been bad at crossing in an offensive sense and bad at defending crosses as well. It's that crosses is our absolute nemesis.
It's been the same since like early Wilder days, really, hasn't it? It seems we look at a player and go, can he defend? Sometimes. Can he go forward? Yeah. Can he cross? No. Perfect. Sign him up. And I do think that's something we need to look at in maybe his transfer status going forward. But maybe if players did tick all 4 boxes, we couldn't afford to buy them anyway. So maybe that's the case. We take one of the lesser evils. I'd like to see a change in style where, especially now Egan's injured, we don't know how long that's for, where we look at switching personnel up. Oh, yeah, of course. Yeah,
there's been some really, really horrible comments about a player who has given so much for Sheffield United. He's going through a tough time right now. And I just want to say, I really hope he gets better soon.
Same here. I echo that, Hal. A player that's they put the armband on him for a reason. I don't think it was the right call, but they put it on him for a reason. That's because he gives everything for the team, whether he's playing well, whether he's not. It's the same with Norwood. I love the guy to pieces. Whether I think he should be starting right now, I adore the bloke, and I'd never wish injury on any player. It's nothing that any fan should be doing, really. You can criticise a performance maybe as a one-off or long-term, but nobody should ever wish for their own player to be injured. It's a difficult one because the personnel we have, I do think, all players being fit, right system, we're not the worst team in the division. 5th or 6th worst team in the division, maybe. And this was the comment Sean Meakin made. Did I expect us to be competitive? I expected us to fight a lot more. I expected us to fight to the levels we did in the Man City game. And that's what's annoying me most. It does seem since that 12th minute at Tottenham that's been kicked out of us, and that needs to change immediately. Everybody's saying that the 8-0 was the kind of low point. No, for me, Tottenham away, anything after the 90th minute was the low point for me. And it's not switched back since.
Well said about the fight, by the way. That is all we really ask for when you are a struggling side that's going to always be in or around the bottom. You've just got to fight. You've got to give everything. That's what
but
the
I have
fans
3
expect.
points.
Yeah, it's a short-term strategy, that one, but yes. Blade Warney says, Hecky is so far out of his depth, he needs a life raft. Does that make sense? There are no tactics bar Hoof to McBurney. He doesn't appear to be able to motivate them as per his character. He is not a motivator as per Wilder. There were no tactics last year. We just had a superior squad. The same tactics which led us to the edge of Europe. It's not so much the tactics, it's the implementation of them. We have a manager largely employing Chris Wilder's tactics. Why wouldn't you just get Chris Wilder to do it, Johnny?
Aye.
Thoughts on that?
I don't think Chris Wilder is the answer at this point in time. I would love to see him back in red and white in the Sheffield United dugout. I don't think right now is the best time. I don't think that there's players there to motivate. Do you know what I mean? They're all behind Eki at the moment. If I'm honest, I'd say if we don't win the Fulham game or get a point at the Fulham game or look like we have the fight at the Fulham game, that'd be me at the end of the tether with Heke. And I don't like saying that, but I would be. But even then, I don't think Wilder is the right option. It's like you said, same system. So what players? He plays the same system, but with some varying differences. But with the same personnel, what's he going to get different? As much as he gets them up for it, what is he going to do different? If we're changing managers, we need somebody else in who's going to come in, kind of tear everything down and rebuild it back up. Because what worries me about Heckingbottom is, yes, he's got a tactic and he's got a setup, but surely every manager has a plan B. Surely every manager should have another tactic in the back pocket to try and use. And that he doesn't seem to have that. And every time he does it, looks conjured and cobbled at the last second. And the players look like they don't know what they're doing. Maybe he's out of his depth. The guy's he's a nice guy. We had one of the best squads in the Championship last season. We then lose our star player, which can't be helped because of the situation. I'm not going into the politics behind that. He's just gone. And suddenly, everything doesn't look as rosy. Then you bring in a lot of new signings at the last minute. Are they still gelling? There's a lot of variables to weigh into it, which is why I think whilst I'm trying to be as reasonable as I can and give him a grace period because he has done so much for us, at some point you've got to cut off the sentimental part of your brain and think, is he up to this? And I want to say that he's going to come out and prove us all wrong. But the more and more it goes on, the more and more you fall into that deep waters and you have to look at it in a bit of a more critical view. And we can all be sentimental and say, look what he's done, and he's done this, he's given us this, and yada, yada, yada. We're a team that needs some fight, and I don't want to see my team relegated at the first time of trying. I know no fan does. A lot of people go, oh, well, we were never going to stay up and blah, blah, blah. Well, if that's your attitude, then I don't see where you see the club going. Are we just going to yo-yo back and forth? Because that's not Sheffield United. We either go for it or we don't. We don't accept defeat before it started. What's the point? So
yeah, I hear what you're saying. I'm just some of those points, right? It was interesting hearing Will, the West Ham fan, saying, sometimes losing your best player has that kind of Harry Kane effect with Tottenham. They look better without. Well, that hasn't been Sheffield United without Iliman and Dye, and we knew it was. I felt like this. A lot of fans said this when we spoke about it. Losing Iliman and Dye, Jason, I want your thoughts on this. Losing Iliman at the start of the season, we had so many people. I think the most grief I've ever got actually was the video I did about Iliman going, who was saying that's it now. Now that we've lost Illy, it's already over. Now, that could permeate onto the players as well. But that's a defeatist attitude. And Johnny just made a very good point. You can if that's your attitude, what's the point? But also motivator. You get a motivator in, and that could maybe just be a slight percentage difference. But we're not a slight percentage difference in the last couple of games away from getting a result, are we? We have been annihilated. And then I think by West Ham, actually, more concerning defeat for me, because they clearly gave up against Newcastle. But West Ham decided, all right, we've done enough now. And we still couldn't capitalise. So Jason, you've just heard everything I've said. You've just heard everything Johnny said. I'd like to hear your thoughts, please.
Yeah, excuse me. It's a tough situation. And Johnny made a good point about sentiment. I think we all very much appreciate what Hecky's done. But I go back to what I said. Slav came in. He didn't have the backing from the Prince and the board to get the players in he wanted. He tried to square peg round hole a bunch of stuff, and it just didn't work either. So it's weird. It's like it feels like if we're resigned is maybe a harsh word, but if we're resigned to keeping Hecky around, maybe we're accepting relegation. But if we try to get a new manager in, which by the way, who is that even? that also feels like we're just accepting relegation. And I feel like a lot of this could just be misdirected angst towards possibly the Prince. And again, sentiment. He's done a lot for the club. Seems like a great guy. He's been in your channel before. But he said he wants to sell the club, I think 4 weeks ago, maybe. Longest 4 weeks of my life, whatever he said that in June or July or wherever that was. And, bless him for keeping money in the club. But what is anybody supposed to do walking into the situation for a team that's been designed to play in specifically one formation for 7 years, 6 years, however long it's been? It's really hard to navigate. And I don't really think there's a good way out besides just fighting through what we have now.
Yeah, Lincoln was a missed opportunity to try a different formation. Pre-season missed opportunities. We have different formations. He has a plan B. We've seen it in game, but we haven't seen it from the start. And that's possibly what we need to do. Because Hecky knows tactics a heck of a lot better than me. A Heckin' bottom a lot better than me. Craig says, unfortunately, we need a new owner, but won't get one. Hecky will most likely wrongfully get the boot. While ever we have the Prince as the owner, we will never compete in the Premier League without a Wilder propping him up. And with the rule changes, anyone would struggle. I mean, Craig, I'll just say to this, even the owner recognises that he needs to sell and that we need further investment to compete and is actively trying to sell. Now, the price, we could get into that. We could probably argue about that for a while, but that's not going to be achieved here today with us for changing the sale price. The substitutes that were brought on by Tottenham Hotspur cost more than Sheffield United is on sale for. So you've also got to think, do you value your club? And how much do you value it? Because if you're saying the price is too high, I'm just playing a bit of devil's advocate here, which I don't normally like doing, but let me put it differently, providing a bit of balance, because you've got to think about it like that. It's an entire football club, not 3 footballers. And the game is just getting so exponentially far away from what it used to be and from the average fan to even comprehend. And you really do need billionaire or billionaires to be involved to make it even remotely fun. And it's getting less fun. Football has changed so much. If you were to change the manager and his backroom staff, and I've made my feelings clear on that. I mean, Jono, is there anyone that even for you like leaps out as a name? I mean, like Adam's just said here, 37 points from 31 games of Liverpool to play twice, City once, Arsenal twice. It's effectively 37 from 26, which is almost 1.5 points a game. It's already insurmountable. Surely, there's no point making a change.
Yeah, I know it's not great at the moment. I don't see changing the manager. What he's going to do. No, like I say, who is out there? Like I said, I know the stories that keep circulating. A Wilder is, they've patched up differences, but he's not the man at the moment for me. Yes, he's done great. I don't want to tarnish anything, but and maybe even more so, why I don't want him to come in now is remember him still for what he's done, because I don't think he will have much difference than what's going on now. So no, for me, I'm happy sticking with Hecky and yeah, that's the question. Who is out there? I don't know anyone that can come in and turn that round. And
who would? And Jono, if we go down, we probably are.
Yeah,
Paul Heckingbottom's got on his CV that he can get Sheffield United promoted.
Yeah, under difficult financial situations, which we'll probably be in again. So
almost certainly. Yeah.
So no, for me, I'm certainly not one that's looking for him to leave. I'm content with content isn't the word, but no, I'm happy sticking with Hecky. There's no one out there that I think will come in and make a difference to where we are at the moment.
Jason, I'm going to ask you this question: do Sheffield United finish on more or less points than the 23 we mustered last time in the top flight?
It feels a lot like less right now. I hope that that perception changes and the sentiment changes, but it's taken so long for us to even seem like they could acknowledge each other on the pitch and playing together well. And it doesn't feel like that's going to come soon. I think we're all hoping it does, and it could. Again, there might be a jumping off point next week or some other match where it feels like we'll get a result and maybe click on from then, but it does feel like less at this point, sadly.
Yeah. I think, do you know what, Johnny, if we beat Fulham, does it change? Does everything suddenly change? You know what football fans are like.
We are the most fickle bunch of anything in the world. That's not just Sheffield United fans, that is football fans.
I actually think Sheffield United fans are incredibly sensible compared with a lot of others, and I think these forums prove it, but please carry on.
Sensible is not a word I would use, especially in a lot of cases. But
all right, let me rephrase it. The ones that watch Shoreham View, Sheffield United Way, Blades Ramble, Travelling Blades, Tufty. There are others. I'm not going to list them all. Anyway, Johnny, please.
Yeah, they're more sensible than most. But we are extremely fickle as a fan base, as a football lover. We win at Fulham, and he gets another grace period in the 6 games, 7 games, where we think, well, we won at Fulham. We've shown we can do it. Until we get that first win, that grace period is narrowing and narrowing, because whether he could have took us up on record points last season, 110 points. He'll always have the asterisk of Paul Eckingbottom took us up with a generational talent in the team. Do you understand what I'm saying? There will always be an excuse somebody will find to downplay what Paul did. And that's
Championship, though. 46 games. I mean, no matter how many generational talent we had in, God, it's a tough league to get out of.
Of course it is.
I think it's really important just to say, because I know you're just doing an example.
Yes.
But God, what a tricky league. And obviously, there's no guarantee when you go down that you're going to get back up, even though I've said I believe he is the man to get us back up.
Yeah, and if we were playing with any kind of intent like we were in the first few games, Palace barring, I don't count Palace, that game never happened. If we play with the intent we did in those games, I think he'd have a longer grace period of a lot of people. But the last 2 have kind of shot him in the foot, really. Going down, if we had Eckingbottom, I would trust him a lot more to get us back up than I would most. But with the way we're playing, unless the intensity levels themselves, even if the results don't rise, even if we don't get a win or a result at Fulham, unless the intensity levels hit those that we were showing before, he ain't going to be here for next season. So we need to start looking forward. So there's managers I wouldn't mind. McKenna at Ipswich is worth a gamble, if nothing more, if he'd come. But we are fickle. We win at Fulham. Everything turns around. It's hecky in. We can do this. We get some belief. Just have it ripped out of his chests again. That is. I'm on the right channel to say it. That is the Sheffield United way of doing things. And one big point I do want to make is this isn't a hecky outcry from me just yet, but I do think that we do need to stop being so sentimental about it, because all the reasons I've heard to keep him so far have been on sentiment. There have been some logical ones. How's, I think you've looked at it more critically than most. I've seen 1 or 2, but a lot of the arguments I hear is he's done this, he's done that, and it's all based on facts of the past. Let's hope at Fulham all these conversations are over for at least another good 2 weeks. That's what I'm hoping for. Win, lose or draw.
Yes. I don't quite know who's going to do an Illiman and die and run through the whole Fulham defence and get us that winner. But yeah, absolutely. A win against Fulham. Suddenly things look a little bit rosier, and it really will change a lot of mentalities. You're absolutely right. Jason, I can't thank you enough for getting up so ridiculously early and joining us from Boston. Go Patriots.
Sure,
why not? Also, Jono, thanks to you for joining us. It's always good to hear your considered opinions. I should mention this. I mention it every time, Jono. A former referee who's refereed at a very high standard. I think, but Jono's actually a good one because he decided to get out. Yeah, you could see the way it was going.
Got out while I had the chance because it's horrendous now. But
good man.
That's another podcast.
It's another. We should probably dedicate a whole hour to Jono because he's a very, very interesting guy in his own right, and as are you, Johnny, of course, as well. Also, Johnny, I'll speak to you offline as well as Jono about my return trips back to Bramall Lane, which I'm slightly regretting booking at a cost of £4 for both. Anyway, that's. Okay, breathe. I'm going to go outside after this and have a little cry. Anyway, thanks to each and every one of you for watching. We'll be back when we're back. Cheers.